School. Hello there. Welcome to Sibley Ocheyedan High School. And my name is James Craig. I'm the superintendent, and it's good to be with you this evening as we discuss our plans to return to learn here at Sibley Ocheyedan for the coming school year. A couple of things that I want to acknowledge before we get started tonight. First, Tony Beavers is up in the sound booth tonight, as he is for so many of our events, running the online, the live streaming, and thank you, Tony, for doing that for us this evening. This is being recorded and live streamed on our district YouTube channel, the SO Media channel, as we speak. One of the cool things, we had a new sound system installed, and he is able to run the sound through the live stream tonight. So my voice is going out to the live stream tonight, and when we pass around the microphone to ask questions later, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and those questions will also be on the broadcast so that everybody listening at home and everybody that watches this later, if they choose to do so, will be able to hear all of the questions and answers that were given tonight. So again, Mr. Beavers, we appreciate you doing that. A couple other things. Also want to recognize our administrators in attendance. Mr. DeZeo, Mr. Jennis, and Mrs. Elser are here this evening, and if we have any building level or activity or athletic questions, we will push some of those to them if I'm not sure what the answer is. There will be several questions that we don't know the answers to tonight, and that's part of the reason of having this meeting, is that we can address those questions and make sure that we get those answered, and things that we may not have thought of yet. So your input is very valuable in this process. And to those of you that are watching on YouTube tonight, make sure that if you have a question, you can go ahead and type your question in the comments section, and Tony will email those, or I'm sorry, he'll text those questions to me, and we'll get those answered for you before we leave tonight. So he'll text the question, and just so you know, there's going to be about a half hour of me, and I apologize for that in advance. That's a lot of me to put up with, but anyway, I'll be talking for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for your questions tonight. I want to also acknowledge the board members that are here this evening. Kyle Grimes, our board president, is here. Greg Atherton, our vice president. Kristen Byers here, a member of our school board. Are there any other board members here that I missed? There's Tasha Boss back in the center back there. Sorry, Abby was the one that waved at me. I apologize. So thank you to the board members for being here tonight. We do want you to be aware that we are aware of the open meetings law, and in board policy 211, it specifically states that any gathering that we have for the purpose of social or ministerial action will not constitute a board meeting. So they are here as concerned parents and community members tonight, which they have every right to be, and we appreciate them being here. But this is not an official board meeting. Again, we want to acknowledge those that are watching on YouTube. Thank you for joining us, and again, you can go back and watch this in the future, and if you want a notification as to when these events happen or when the recordings are available, make sure you click subscribe on the YouTube channel, SO Media, and you'll get an email that gives you that notification. We also want to make you aware that online registration is open now. Registration in person is August 4th, next Tuesday, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. here, and otherwise the online registration is open right now, so we encourage you to take advantage of that. So again, we'll have a few questions at the end. You'll have time to ask questions, but for right now, we're going to go ahead and get into the presentation. So each section of our plan, and there are 7 different sections that we're going to cover, some in great length this evening and some just as a quick overview because they're for informational purposes only. But we want to start with the guiding principles, and that's really Board Policy 101. You can look that up online, and it talks about our core beliefs, our vision and mission, and our district goals. Now, the new district vision of engage, educate, empower, I think it is an important message for us here tonight. We want to engage with you, the community, in what information we have, what input you have for us, so we can educate each other and then empower each other to do the best that we can for our kids and make the best decisions that we can for our district. So we appreciate you being here tonight. The mission statement, the new mission statement, at Sibley Ocheyedan Schools, we build partnerships, and we hope that we're starting that process tonight to grow the partnerships that we already have. We build partnerships to challenge minds, and this has been a very challenging topic and a very challenging time, but we're ready to move forward. Challenge minds to invest in community, which we want you to be involved in the process, but we also want to develop our program so that we can continue to be supportive of the community and its economy. And finally, to celebrate life. And in the end, I think it's about high time we did that. We have a lot to celebrate. We have a lot to be proud of in our kids in our district, and we're excited to move that process forward. Please join us. Come on in. There's plenty of room. And have a seat anywhere you can find a space. So section 1 of the plan is entitled Leadership. And to be honest, this is where we list all of the people that have worked on this plan so far. So it has a list of those people on it. The administrative cabinet is our administration plus our department heads. The leadership team includes curriculum team leaders, includes guidance counselors, includes instructional coaches, includes AEA staff, a variety of different people to approach this from all angles. And then subcommittees are formed out of those groups to work on each section of the plan that we'll go into detail on tonight. Has a subcommittee that runs it. And then it talks about how we're going to communicate with the public, which means we're going to use traditional media, social media, and our JMC outreach to be able to communicate with you as time goes on. Section 2 is infrastructure, and really it talks about technology infrastructure. So here in the district, we are very solid on our infrastructure. Mr. Beavers does a tremendous job with Stacy Loneman in the tech department to keep everything running for us. We are very invested in our system. We don't have any bandwidth issues. When the kids are here at school, all of them can be on their computers at the same time along with the staff members, and they can get done what they need to get done very easily. One of the things that we need to work on, and we'll address later in the plan, is that equitable access at home, and making sure that everybody has access to the internet that they need in order to do the schoolwork. And we'll address that as we get to parts of the plan later. But again, we have a very solid infrastructure here, and that's what's talked about in section 2. So the first 2 sections, informational, not a huge deal. Section 3 is where we really start to hit the meat and potatoes of the plan, and that's with health and safety. So with the governor's new proclamation on July 17th, we have the ability to make decisions all the way down to the classroom level as to when we have to quarantine students or classrooms or the district. So just as a general example, I have a daughter that was a 4th grader last year. So if she would have been diagnosed with COVID, we would have the opportunity now to quarantine just that 4th grade class, those 16 to 18 kids that were in her class and the teacher. They would go home, they would be online for 2 weeks, and then they would come back. So they do their 14 days, the teacher is available to them, they continue to do instruction, but it's only for that 2-week quarantine period. That way, anybody that's still sick can stay home and everybody else can return to school. So it gives us a lot more control over the decision-making process if we have to quarantine due to a confirmed case of COVID. It also allows us to do this at the building level and the district level. The only caveat is that we're supposed to start with everybody on the first day of school, and we plan to do that. August 24th is our first day of school, and we will be here with the students. The first day right now of professional development is a week before that on the 17th for new staff. And as we move forward, we'll just have to make decisions on how that works. Right now, our county is, we have had 4 new cases in the last 2 weeks. The latest update today was we have had 75 cases total since the pandemic started, which for us is way back to March and February when they started keeping track of cases. So in that time, we've had 75 cases, no deaths, and we have no hospitalizations. So our case count is very low. Our symptoms have been very mild, and we have not had to deal with a lot of cases at this point. Now, if you go to put 900 people in a building, something may happen. And we have to be prepared for that reality, but at the same time, we feel and agree with public health that we can come back to school and we can run things as normally as possible with mitigation strategies in place to try and prevent the spread from happening. So we'll be prepared for anything that comes up. So your job as parents and guardians is to make sure that if your child is sick, they stay home. And that can be one of the most difficult decisions to make because you're working, because you're out doing things, providing for your family, and you don't have a babysitter. And if they're sick and you don't want to send them to grandma's house because they've got COVID, that becomes a very challenging issue. Unfortunately, we have to ensure that our population here in the buildings are safe, and so if your child is sick, they need to stay home. If they have a fever over 100.4 degrees, they are required to stay home. And if they come to school and we detect that they have a fever at or above 100.4 degrees, they will be coming home. So it's important that we make sure that that's just general practice at any point. We want the kids to be safe. But it is something that we're going to ask parents to really clamp down on and help us out with because, besides the fact that there's COVID, there's everything else that goes around schools that we have to deal with on a normal basis. And so to keep the population as healthy as possible and to keep everybody in school for as many days as we can and as much learning as we can, we have to make sure that we're taking care of those things. We are asking also that you take your child's temperature every day. It's going to be nearly impossible for us to take 900 temperatures at the beginning of the school day and be able to get to education in the morning, especially when you factor in inclement weather. When do you let them in the building? At what point is who taking the temperature? How do you do the documentation? What if you do have someone that has a fever and now the people around them, or what do you do? So we're asking for your help as well to make sure that you're taking temperatures before the students come to school. Now, another concern is student absences when they are sick, and if they are a diagnosed COVID case, their absence obviously will be somewhere around 14 days. So that makes people nervous because, well, at 10 days, you're going to send me a letter from the district attorney and I'm going to be in trouble. So with COVID, if they're forced to quarantine, the absences will be marked that way in JMC. They'll be marked as COVID, and they will count as one event. They will not count as 14 days toward the full absences of the student for the year. So if it's anything but COVID, regular attendance policies will apply, and those are in your handbooks at the different levels. But if it's COVID, that will be marked that way and kept as one event. Due to bus regulations coming out that we can have no more than 13 to 14 students on a bus, in-town bus stops will be suspended until the end of the health disaster declaration. So that means the 5 bus stops that we have had here in town will not be picking up until the end of the disaster declaration. So we are asking parents, and as we sent out the community survey that was filled out and sent back by over 63% of our parents, overwhelmingly, we were going to be able to manage that. That's not going to be true in every case, but the survey gave us data that showed we were going to be able to make that happen. So with bus routes, you'll be able to, 13 people will be able to ride the bus. Family members will be able to ride together, which increases the capacity a little bit. But we are also asking anyone that lives outside the 2-mile radius of the school where you would normally have bus services provided, we are asking you to bring your students into school as often as possible as well to help us maintain capacity. We simply don't have the buses or the drivers to get to everyone with the regulations that we have in place currently. And again, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, all of this is purely related to the governor's disaster declaration. Once that is lifted, and right now it was extended for another month, they're going 30 days at a time now. Once that is lifted or not renewed, all of this plan goes away. Now we will still do the mitigation things, we'll still do the cleaning things, we will still have all of that available. However, all of the planning and the online instruction and all of those options go away. We go back to regular bus routes, we go back to regular activities and transportation, we go back to what we remember, the good old days. So in the meantime, again with transportation, we're asking for parents to help us out there, and at registration, let us know what you need. We know that's not going to work for everybody, but in town, that's what we're going to have to do. Out of town, where we provide those services and legally we're required to, we're going to ask parents to help us out as much as we can. So students, when they're in the buildings, we're going to ask them to continuously move when it's a transition time. Make sure that you don't get caught congregating in between classes. So yes, the big meanie says you cannot talk to your friends. Yes, you can talk to your friends, but keep moving to your next class. Again, it's that 6 feet for 15 minutes. If you're inside of that and you haven't been around them for 15 minutes, you don't have to wear a mask. In the classroom is where we're going to struggle with that and where masks are most recommended. Also, high school students in particular, you need to be, you can report at 8 o'clock and you can go to your classroom. Usually we have the mass gathering out here in the cafeteria as people are waiting for the bell to ring to go to class and others are eating breakfast. So only people that are eating school food will be allowed in the cafeteria seating. Everybody else can go to class at 8 o'clock. That way we avoid the mass gathering before school starts. Every classroom will have cleaner and microfiber cloths available to the teachers so that between each class period they can wipe down touch points and wipe down surfaces. Teachers should be the only ones opening classroom doors during the day, and we're going to leave them propped open as much as we can just to avoid contact with the touch point. Automatic hand sanitizers will also be installed in every classroom. Now, these funds to pay for these things are coming from the CARES Act and the ESSER funds that are a part of that CARES Act, and we'll talk about those in a later section as well, but we are making sure that those things are available in every classroom for everyone to use. Now, parents, and it's important that parents and guardians know that you have the right to choose continuous learning or online learning for your student or your children for the duration of the health disaster declaration. I still can't say that very well. You have the right to choose online learning. So you can start it at the beginning of the year and decide that you're not comfortable coming back to school yet because of COVID, sending your children back, and that's fine. We will have the online option set up for you, and you can make that happen. You can also rescind that at any time and come back. Well, this is not working for me, and I guess it's not that bad. Let's just go back to school. That's fine. You can only do that once. So it's not going to be a situation where, okay, I'm going to start, I didn't like that, I'm going to go back to school. Well, 2 days later, I'm scared again, so I'm going to go home. And 3 days later, well, I don't like that. Yeah, you remember I didn't like that. I'm going to go back. That's not going to happen. So you have the ability to pick online and stick with it. Some districts are going an entire quarter before they let students back in the building. We are of the opinion that, if it's not going to work, and you can deal with the risk, then that's what you need to do, is come back to school, and then we're going to stick with that. So again, you have the option to do that, and you can mark that option on registration. And if you already did your registration and didn't see that option, just call the office and they'll take care of you for that. Okay, so that's the health and safety section, section 3. Section 4 is Iowa Academic Standards and Continuous or Online Learning. So we're going to switch gears here into the education part of it. As of today, which this was given to the board last week, so as of July 20th, our plan, and still is today, is to start August 24th back in classes. The elementary, we have purchased new Chromebooks. They were not on rotation, but their machines were getting very, very old, and in the interest of making sure that we were prepared for those students to possibly have to go online at some point if they get quarantined, we went ahead and used saving PEPL dollars to purchase Chromebooks, as we purchase Chromebooks for every other building on the one-to-one plan learning rotation. So this year was also the high school's year, so they will be getting new Chromebooks, and the elementary will be getting new Chromebooks as part of the one-to-one program. Now, elementary students will not be allowed to take their computers home. They will only be sent home if the class gets quarantined. The Chromebooks will be assigned to students so that they do not have to share, they don't have to trade, they don't have to use somebody else's if theirs doesn't work. There will be extras, and they'll figure all that out. So from a sanitation standpoint, we want to make sure that they have access to their own machine, and there'll be a high quality machine like the other machines that we have. Teachers this year will have professional development to help them with curriculum instruction and assessment in the online world, and we'll get to that here in just a second in another slide. Google Classroom is basically the program that teachers can use to make materials available to students online. So if you go home and you can ask your student after they've been in school for a couple of days, show me your Google Classroom. And they will be able to show you what classes they're taking, what materials are available in that class, and what they're working on. It will show them due dates. There's a whole bunch of things. And now there's a connection to JMC for teachers that they're going to learn about, so the grades go directly from Google Classroom straight into JMC. That was piloted this year and went very well, so we look forward to that being available to all of our teachers this next year. So things to remember for down the road. If you choose for your child or your children to start the year in online learning, it's important for you to know that the days of voluntary are gone. Attendance and participation is compulsory. It is required. And so they will take attendance to make sure that your students are online every day. They will be checking assignments to make sure that you're done. You have to do assignments. Your child will fail if they don't do anything. And we know this because if kids don't do anything when they're at school, they get Fs. They get zeros. The same thing will happen with online if they decide to stay home and not do anything. So it's important to remember that attendance and participation are required. Also listed in the plan are for each, well, not for each grade level, but for grade spans, preschool through second grade, third grade through sixth grade, and seventh grade through 12th grade, if I remember correctly. There are expectations for how much instruction will be made available online to students every week, and how much homework will be assigned to students from a time standpoint on a weekly basis. So again, you can read through the plan and see exactly what's in there. But again, if your student is choosing online learning, you're going to want to read through this section and make sure you know what those expectations are. When we are in a continuous learning environment, teachers will be using Google Meet to record their classroom instruction. Those videos will be available on Google Classroom, and students can go back and watch them. So students will not be completely on their own. It will not be the same. It will never be the same as in-person instruction, and we understand that. But dealing with the times, we have to do the best with what's available to us, and this technology can provide us with many opportunities to get it as close as we possibly can. So they record the lesson, upload it to Google Classroom. The students can get the class materials on the same place. They can watch the lesson, do the materials, and then they can still contact the teacher, at times provided by the teacher when they are available during the day. So some things about curriculum, instruction, and assessment. You may have heard that other schools around us are starting at different times, and some are starting earlier than we are. We waited until our original date of August 24th, and everybody had a different approach to how they were going to bring kids back and how they're addressing the learning gap that's been created by missing 9 weeks of instruction in the spring. So for us, the curriculum teams got together, and we decided that coming back to school on time, if we started early, for us, it wasn't going to give us the individual attention with the kids that most needed it so that we could get everybody as close back together when we started the year as possible. That's why we expanded the tutoring program and the Jump Start program for this summer so that we could give students that needed it more individual attention. We know that there are more things that have to be caught up yet. And we know that the instruction that was missed in the last 9 weeks has to be incorporated into this school year. So what would naturally be review at the beginning of this year now becomes things that have to be explicitly taught. So we're making those plans. We're working on how to get that embedded in instruction, and we will be doing some diagnostics at the beginning of the year to help us identify what students have what gaps, just to help us group kids together that need this instruction or this instruction or this instruction so that we can move those things forward as quickly as possible for the students. Now, I said something about professional development, and I realize this slide is very small, but that's somewhat on purpose to say this is all of the stuff that the staff is thinking about right now as they're preparing to return to learn. And some of them are about education, which is awesome. Youth Children's Mental Health First Aid, Kite Learning for Google Apps, APL teaching strategies, curriculum, iReady, which is one of the new assessments that we'll be using to identify the learning gaps, building level initiatives that they're working on, and then all of the mandated trainings that they have to take every year that we need to make sure are addressed. So they are working on a ton of stuff right now to be able to start the year and hit the ground running. I know Macy, my 10-year-old, she's going into 5th grade this year. She participated in Jump Start today, and if your child you got a note about Jump Start and you weren't there today, don't worry, come tomorrow. It's a great time. She had a ball. She had Mrs. Nag for reading and Mrs. Schroeder for technology, and she had Mrs. Wedge for math, and I don't remember who all else she had, but she just had a ball today. So make sure that if you got that letter and you weren't able to make it today, come tomorrow. Also a reminder that they can grab lunch, not tomorrow, but Wednesday for the rest of the week. And that'll be the last day that's offered before school starts because they've got to clean the kitchen and get it ready for the school year. So the summer food program also ends this Wednesday. That's just a cheap plug in the middle of everything else. But Wednesday, we thank the kitchen staff and food service for making that possible this summer. All right, section 5 is social, emotional, behavioral health. And so far I'm at 25 minutes, so I hope to be done in my 30 minutes that I promised you at the beginning. We are preparing to meet the needs of students, staff, and teachers, and families. We've all been through the last 5 months with completely differing effects on our lives. Kids at home. So I just I can't empathize with you enough, what we've all been through. However, as we come back, there are going to be things that we've dealt with over the summer that are going to be difficult when we come back to school. And it's going to be important that we are addressing those mental health needs, our social learning needs, and our behavioral health needs. How's that? Okay, back in business. That's why he's here, see. He takes care of that for us. Okay, so where was I? Local providers. We are so excited that the number of providers that we have in the community available to our families is growing. It's one of the most needed services that we're looking for in the community, and we're proud to say that that Osceola County and our region is growing in the number of providers. So Amanda Tenapel is going to be joining the ranks with her own private practice. I thought I turned that off. Private practice called Interconnections Therapy. She'll be based out of the public health office at the by the hospital, and she will be available, as well as we have AEA services available to us, and there are lots of other folks who are available to help as well. I'm on the Osceola County Mental Health Coalition with Wendy Marco, who is here tonight, and several other members of the community from the faith community, from different occupations in the community, all concerned about. Board of Supervisors is represented on there, and that's what we are there for, is to try to help get services and communicate things to people in order to get so that they know that there are options available. So we're really excited that those things are moving forward. Section 6 is equity. And this is an important piece because we have to talk about all of the different different identified student groups. So students that have IEPs in special education will have to have an addendum made to their IEP for the start of the year in case they would have to go into quarantine and have online instruction. Because it is required this year, we will have to make sure that we are providing services to those students to help them continue to move along. So IEP students have to have an accommodation added to their IEP at the beginning of the year. We also need to reach out to our ELL community and make sure we've been sending things out in English and Spanish. We need to continue to add translating services to make sure that people know that if they don't speak English, there is somebody here at the school that will talk to them, can help them, and can help bridge the communication gap that way. And we need to do more than what we're currently doing in order to reach all of those students and all of those families. More connections with students deemed at risk. There are ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, that factor into determining if a student is at risk. And Amy Elser, our new activities director, is also our new at-risk coordinator, and she will be heading up the efforts to work with those students as well. They'll be identified through parents, staff, peers, whatever it may be, and she will be leading up the effort to communicate with those families, working with teachers and staff. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, we need to investigate internet access and make sure we have equitable access at home. Now, if you don't have internet at home that can handle running the programs that the students need to run, or you don't have internet at all, we have people that have reached out to us and say, don't say who we are, we want to remain anonymous, but we can help. And if somebody reaches out to you and needs help, we will help them. So I encourage you to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, and those people that you know that may not have the strong internet connection, and have them reach out to us, and we will work to get something set up for them. We want to make sure that if we go online, equitable access is a major concern, that we have, that we get that addressed. Last spring with voluntary learning, we got to a lot of families, and we did get several folks set up with internet so that they could continue moving forward. So we can help, we will help, we want to help. Section 7, the final section, and I'm sorry, I'm 3 minutes over. Thanks for putting up with me. Section 7 is our financial information. We received as a district $106,551 in ESSER funds from the CARES Act, which was meant to be spent on expenses incurred due to COVID-19 and things that we had to do as a result. There are several specific categories that all of that fits into, but right now we've spent about 15% of that money on PPE, on masks. We're looking to buy dividers. We've bought cleaning equipment. We've bought cleaning supplies, several things. But right now we've spent about 15% of that money. As we get further into the different things that we're looking at for different barriers, and we've purchased some face coverings that we'll have available. That money will get eaten up pretty quickly, but it is good that it's there. It helps protect so that we don't spend out of our general fund to buy those things that are not hopefully going to be permanent things. So we're excited about that opportunity. And that's a little about me. So we will be here as long as we need to tonight. And as I said, Tony is up there on YouTube, and as we get questions, you can remember, those of you watching us on YouTube, you can type the questions into the comment section. Tony will text them to me and we'll get those addressed. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Claudia. And actually, you know what? Why don't I go ahead and do it? That way, since I only have one mic now, I'll just walk around and do that part, okay? Not that I don't want you to, but. Okay, so I'd be happy, you'll just have to wait for me to get up and down the stairs as we go along, and I may have to refer to my notes at some point. But is there anyone that would like to open up the questions?
So for the for the absences, if we have repeat people who come in and have to quarantine class, I mean, how many absences is that going to occur as incidences, and how many can they get?
Right, so anytime a student has to quarantine due to COVID, we're going to classify that as an event because most likely it will go up to 14 days. Those days will be coded because we have to account for them, but they're going to be coded as COVID so that they are not counted toward general absenteeism, like if you're sick or if you went on vacation or you had a death in the family or you skipped school or whatever it was. COVID is going to get its own class, and it's not going to count against your overall absenteeism, simply because, you know, unless you're actually sick, you know, you're only going to be sick for a couple of days that you couldn't come back to school, but you still have to quarantine. If you're in the room with them and you have to quarantine, that's not your fault that you have to be gone that 14 days.
And then I guess with that too, if somebody gets, so they only quarantine with an incident or with a confirmed case?
Right, so and this is where we're dependent on the public and the parents to make sure that they're informing us of what's going on. You have to make sure that the school is notified that there was a case so that we can let the area affected know. So for example, if you are the case and I am in your classroom, then the school is going to qualify or quarantine our classroom. If it's something where maybe you're in an older grade, like 7th or 8th grade, and maybe you see a high school teacher, what happens then? Do we have to get a sub for the high school teacher and quarantine those classes, or are those classes okay, but we have to send the teacher home because they were in contact with you? There's a lot of things that factor into what's called first-person contact and second-person contact. So first-person contact means I was in direct contact with you, so I have been exposed. Doesn't mean that I have it, but I've had the risk of being exposed. Second-person contact would mean that Abby saw me later, but not with you, so she's second-person contact, and she doesn't have to worry about it yet. So first-person contact is you and me. Second-person contact is Abby and me in that situation.
So like at work, I guess our big thing is if somebody's showing symptoms. So I guess my question towards that I was trying to get to was, so if a kid would just get sick and vomit in class, everybody automatically quarantine, or do they wait for a confirmed case, or do they go home for the specific period till they find out, or how does that work?
Right, so that we are not the medical professionals in that respect, so we will not diagnose anybody just because they show a symptom. Have any of you been to a store and coughed lately? Real great way to make friends real fast. But in all seriousness, that's a symptom, right? And so just because they display a symptom, even a fever is not necessarily a symptom, other than it's not necessarily means you have COVID. It means you have a fever. So your body's fighting something. Well, what is that? You know, and if the symptoms persist, you go see your doctor and they may test you. But in the end, the doctors make that determination, and then the parents have to notify us so that we can properly address the rest of the classroom. To be honest, if a student is sick, doesn't get tested, and comes back to school when they feel better, they've not had the fever for 2 days, they're off Tylenol, all of that, then we're right back to a regular situation that way. So just because a student presents with a symptom doesn't mean we will say they have COVID. Okay? Any other questions?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the question was asked earlier about activity passes, and do we buy one? What happens if the season gets canceled? What if games get canceled and we don't get our money's worth out of the activity pass? Do I really want to go buy one at this point? And the answer is I don't know. Right now, fall sports are scheduled to take place. First practice is August 10th. We got an update on football last week that we're playing 7 games, and the 8th game of the season is the first round of the playoffs, and every team in the state qualifies for the playoffs. We don't know, however, that that will continue, that the state doesn't come down with a decision, or that we don't have to make a decision about our own team. So in the event that you buy an activity pass and we end up not having a season, we would have to consider some sort of compensation for that, but we haven't discussed what that looks like, so I can't say what that would be yet.
Does that include middle school sports or just high school?
Do activity passes cover middle school sports? Oh, are middle school sports planning on starting the season? Okay, so we have not heard from the state association yet.
How's transportation going to look for the various activities? Will it be like softball and baseball were this year with bringing your kids to the events and stuff like that? And same thing with marching band. Do you know?
At this point, we're going with the same guidance that we had of, we only have the 13. Now, we do have activity buses that can drive. It may change our leave time somewhat, but we haven't gotten into the scheduling of that yet. But right now we haven't heard anything that's going to allow us to go away from 13 on a bus. And if we do go away from 13 on a bus, we're going to be able to do the community things as well with routes. So until that changes, that's all part of the same guidance.
How extensive is the contact tracing if you do have a confirmed case in the classroom? Is it the entire classroom? Will there be studies done to say this student was within 6 feet of this person for 15 minutes in multiple spaces?
So as far as that goes, it'll be first contact in the classroom. So if I'm in that 4th grade classroom with my daughter Macy, I'm within those kids, 6 feet within those kids for over 15 minutes because I'm with them all day. And every student is going to be in a classroom with a certain number of kids for at least 45 minutes a day. And so that's where the masking is so important. We recommend it, but it's not required. But and that's again based on public health information and our case count being so low. But as far as when we get something and we're notified, then we're going to decide who has been in the closest contact for the appropriate amount of time to send them home.
On the elementary level, it's easy to say, okay, these kids were together and you have a confirmed case to quarantine this class. So when you get to the high school level, say student A contacted it, but they have 8 different classes during the day. So is that those 8 different classes are all going to have to be quarantined? Because you have different students in different classes.
Right now, that's on a case-by-case basis, and I don't have a specific answer for you because we're not going to know all of those details. So beyond the only thing that I feel confident in is saying that, like that elementary example, where they're in the space all day with each other. When we get to the high school, we're gonna depend on public health to help us with what's that first person contact, at what point is the risk there, and we'll just have to go from there.
What is your response with public health? Are they confident going forward with school, or do they have a grave concern for the kids going back to school?
Right now, public health is very much in support of us going back to school because of the reasons that I was talking about with the number of cases that we have. They were very disappointed, and this is their opinion and not my field of expertise, but that Osceola County was labeled a hotspot when we've had 4 new cases in 2 weeks. Yes, that meets the ratio of 1 in 100 per 100,000 population, but it's 4 new cases in 2 weeks and 75 over the course of the entire thing. So our uptick rate is not what it would be to have issues. They were fine with us going forward with baseball and softball. We unfortunately had to follow the guidance that we had for baseball when that happened, but yeah, they have no concerns about us going back at this time.
Do they feel the same with the fall sports? I know they had the baseball situation this year. Do they have the same concerns going forward with fall sports with volleyball and football?
Well, we were supposed to have new guidance on volleyball, cross country, and football today. So far, we've only heard about football. So we don't have guidance on how we're going to have practices and provide mitigation, what that's going to look like during the game. Are we going to sanitize footballs and volleyballs in between every play? Are we going to use a mask of some sort on the football helmets? Are we going to have the seventh person running around the volleyball side called the sanitator or something that sprays the ball every time it's hit? I don't know, and that's the hard part. A lot of this we're still waiting on guidance on from the state, who is doing the research on how to have practices so that we can all do them successfully. Getting my steps in.
With some of the new CDC guidelines coming out that doesn't necessarily, our public health doesn't agree with, are we sticking with our public health suggestions where, like, CDC is now saying 72 hours after symptoms have subsided without the use of medicine that you're able to return back to wherever? Are we still going with our public health saying we have to quarantine for 14 days?
Until we've put those two things together, we're going with what we've done. So CDC updated their guidelines, I believe, last week. We haven't had a conversation about how that impacts our guidance because public health is working on Iowa Department of Public Health. There's also the American Association of Pediatricians, who has given different guidance to say even 3 feet of social distancing is fine, which allows us to just basically have a regular classroom. But that's not what public health says yet. So we do get conflicting guidance all the time on these questions. So again, in fact, this document, if you look online, it said it was approved on July 20th, and now at the bottom of the page it says edited July 27th. So that date will continue to change because now we have multiple opinions of what it is to safely bring students back to school. And in the end, what we are confident in is that we have not seen the spread here in Osceola County to give us the concern that coming back is going to cause us to have any issues. That said, you put 900 people in a couple of buildings and somebody's bound to catch something, because that's how it works every year. So what we don't know, and why the masks are so important, is that we reduce the chances of people getting any sort of infection from COVID, or when it becomes flu season, we get the flu, we get the flu vaccine. Maybe there will be a vaccine that'll take care of this, and maybe not. We're still waiting on those things on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that I really appreciate and commend the community and all of you on is that, I understand that all of this is very frustrating, but the support that we have had to know that, no, we are not the health experts. Yes, we are trying to do what we can to get back to school, get kids back to school in regular activities. It's vital that we do everything that we can, stay up to date on the guidance as much as we can, and make the best decisions that we can. And I appreciate your support. The administrators appreciate your support. We understand that it's frustrating and it's not convenient. None of this is convenient or easy. So thank you for your support on that. I'm going to check and see if Mr. Beavers has sent me any messages yet. Just a few. Okay. Very good. Meg Wolf asks, will there be a bus route for the Ocheyedan Town kids? The Ocheyedan Town stop is considered an out-of-town stop for us because the buildings are over here. So there will be a pickup at Ocheyedan, but again, we will be asking parents to bring their students as much as possible to help us with capacity. We will have to redraw the routes at some point, and Amos Klein-Wiltrink, our transportation director, is already doing great work getting his bus drivers to call parents and try to get some of those routes figured out now so that we know where we need to send buses, or if we need to send 2 here instead of 1, do we even need to send a bus out this way, because we're going to get help that way. So we encourage you to contact Amos with questions, and also be looking for a call from your regular route driver if they haven't talked to you yet about the route. From Shelley R. S. Shelley R. What if one student in the classroom tests positive? How many will have to quarantine? Again, Shelley, that will be a case-by-case decision. It could be something where the whole classroom has to go home. It could reach out to an entire set of grade levels. It could go to a building. It could go to the district as a whole. We'll just have to take that on a case-by-case basis. Kara Hine, one of our middle school teachers. Hello, Mrs. Hine. How will we quarantine for middle school purposes since we switch classes? How do you determine which teacher is quarantined with them? And therein lies one of the difficult decisions that we have to make is, would all the 5th and 6th graders have to go home, and the teachers, for 2 weeks because they all switch classes? Would the 7th and 8th graders have to go home? And if they had an exploratory with a high school teacher, would that teacher have to go home because they had first-person contact? So those are all decisions that, again, we're going to have to make. We are currently talking about cohorting, the possibility of keeping students in classrooms and not switching teachers. That's going to prove very difficult at the middle school and high school level, particularly with project-based learning classes and lab classes. At the elementary, we don't know if we can do that yet or not. So with the classes that move already. So again, that's a work in progress, and we will be continuing to work on that. Jill, will elementary kids be switching classes during the day, like switching to math and reading? And I hope I just addressed that for you, Jill. Jessica Williams asks, will elementary be eating in classrooms? Will they be allowed to do recess? So have we talked about recess at all? Okay, recess is on our list of things to talk about. Will elementary be eating in classrooms? Right now we are looking at barriers to put up at the tables in the cafeteria so that students can continue to eat in the cafeteria but have some sort of plexiglass or hard plastic barrier between them so that they can still eat as normally as possible in the cafeteria. Rachel asks, what will band and music concerts look like? Hello, Ms. Kieber. Thanks for joining us tonight. Right now, the concerts are far enough away that we really haven't talked about them yet. Marching band is still having rehearsals in cohorts. So, in fact, the color guard, the flag group was in here today, and they were all spread apart in here working on their routines. When the percussion comes in and the wind instruments come in, they're going to have the band room, the gym, and outside to use for all of that. So until we get closer to concert and performance time and whether we're still under the health disaster declaration or not, I'm not going to be able to answer that question, but we'll make sure it's on the list. Natalie Weber asked about recess and lunch in the elementary, and we are still working on those. How about things like band in middle school? Will the kids be allowed to participate? Yes, they will. Our band directors are working on how to make that possible right now. I know there's little covers that you can put over bells on the instruments that are masks that you can get that have holes in them so the mouthpiece can go on your lips or inside your mouth for the woodwinds. There are also several videos of bands that are doing a lot of creative things with face shields and bags over the instruments and a lot of things. There is an aerosol study that was started in Colorado about a month ago, and they are currently trying to figure out, when you play or sing, does it project the little particles, the droplets, does it project those to a dangerous extent as you're playing your instrument? So There's a lot of research going on to what that's going to look like. As of now, we are planning on moving forward with classes with as much mitigation as possible. Social distancing won't be feasible, and so masks are recommended for people to wear, or face coverings of some sort. Meg Wolf asks, how will we know if the bus is full or not that day? And Meg, we're going to have to make that decision before school starts. So if you can bring your kids in, we'll ask you to bring them in for the duration of the declaration. If you're not able to do that, then we'll work out a way for the bus to be able to pick you up. But that's something we're going to have to determine before school starts, and then we're going to have to stay with that until we're back to full capacity. All right, thank you for sending those down, Tony. And my ringer is off, so I don't know how you knew I had all those messages. Okay, other questions?
If we have a kid with a confirmed case, when will they be able to come back to school? Do they have to have doctor's permission before they come back, or a doctor's release before they come back, or is it just 14 days and they can come back?
That would be how the quarantine would work. So once they're a diagnosed case, they're going to go back to when they think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, but they go back to when the suspected infection, when your symptoms started, and that's when they count the 14 days from. So Wendy Marco is here from the hospital, and she said that it likely won't be 14 days that you're quarantined. We say that because that's what the number is, but it goes back to when your symptoms started, and then if you tested, whenever you tested, then you still wait for that test to come back, and then your 14 days, you just serve the rest of it. You're quarantined for the rest of it, and then you come back. But yes, it would take a doctor's release. They're going to tell us when that day is.
So if there is a confirmed case, how will parents be notified? Will we receive notification other than just word of mouth from other students or a text message to the students? Will there be communication from educators or whatever, rather than just hearing it kind of secondhand? How will parents be notified?
Okay, so I'm going to ask one question before I answer that. Okay, so it's considered a reportable event. So without sounding flippant or trying to equate anything together, when we have a head lice case, we send a letter home and we notify whoever that there's been a case of head lice. This would be the same idea, but you're not going to get, it's going to be like a snow day. You're going to get a call and it says, we have been notified that there is a case in your group. They are being quarantined until this date. But again, it's going to be like a snow day. You're not going to get a lot of heads up, which doesn't make this easier either. What's that? Yes. But it's not going to be a letter that gets mailed out and you get it 2 or 3 days later, and you're going to get a message right away.
I think also knowing that there's contact tracing happening, giving the educators a little bit of grace to allow that process to happen, because there has to be an investigation done to make sure that they fully encompass everybody that was involved or potentially exposed.
Okay.
My Mine's just maybe for clarification. So if you have multiple kids in the school district, you have 3, 4 kids in different classrooms, whether it's elementary, middle school, high school, one classroom, there's a case confirmed, and that classroom gets quarantined. What does that do with the other kids in the household that are younger, and maybe, does that affect them with whether or not to say they're in elementary school with them coming back too? Does that affect them, or do they fall under the second phase, I guess?
Right, and I'm going to refer to Wendy again. Wendy Marco from Avera Health is here with us tonight. Not to embarrass her or call her out, but there she is. So if first person and second person contact, is that when we're talking about siblings of a family member in a quarantine class, they will still be able to come to school because they're a second person contact? Oh. Okay, so for the benefit of those that are on YouTube and weren't able to hear that part of the conversation, when you have multiple children in the district, like I have 2, Sailors, you have 3 right now? Okay, Silers, I'm sorry, you have 3 right now. If you have multiple students in the district and one is in a classroom that gets quarantined, the other siblings can still come to school if your child isn't the one that's got the COVID case. Obviously, if you have the COVID case, then your whole family has to quarantine for the duration. But if they're in a class that gets quarantined because somebody else had the case, the other family members can continue to come to school because they're a second person contact. Okay, so we'll have you give so the question came on the switch from quarantine to symptom. So now you're presenting with exposure to symptoms. Okay.
So you may have a quarantine child at home because they were exposed to the one in the classroom. Now you're monitoring that child for symptoms during that quarantine. If they then become symptomatic, they're going to have to go through they would recommend, if their provider wanted them to get a test, they become positive. Now the rest of the family becomes a direct contact, and they would then not be allowed to come to school at that point.
Right. So I think the big message there is that if your child is in a class that gets quarantined, but they are not the case, you have to monitor them for symptoms, because if they start presenting with symptoms, you need to take them to the doctor to get seen, and the doctor may choose to test for COVID. And so it's important that you continue to monitor over the course of the quarantine. Tony, are there any more questions on YouTube? Okay, I'll get down there in just a second. Oh, you're fine.
Is our school district, do they have a certain percentage of X amount of classes in the school district that turned up with a positive case before we would close down as a school? Is there guidelines for that, or are we?
We are expecting someone, and I don't mind that you have questions. He has to put up with, I apologize for my, anyway, we are expecting metrics to come from the governor's office on August 4th that will give us some of those details and some of those expectations. So right now we do not, but we will adjust to the guidance when it comes.
So what if you have a snowball effect in a classroom? One child gets it, then the next child, then the next child, then the next child. So is that entire class going to be quarantined for 9 weeks, 10 weeks, a semester?
Should have just got 2 microphones on. I gave you one. Yeah.
You know, it's why you guys are definitely trying to do everything that you can to prevent that when it comes to sanitation. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but that's where public health really comes in with the contact tracing and the guidance for making sure that they're fulfilling their quarantine and really monitoring who the primary contacts are at that point. So we follow the guidance. You know, so far, in the last 2 weeks, we've only had 4 new cases in Osceola County. So I think it's difficult because we're all tired of it, but I think everybody's doing a really good job. So we just continue to support, wash your hands, use your social distancing, but it could happen, but we just have to rely on the system to use it, and hopefully we can keep them down and keep it controlled and keep kids in the school. But we don't know. It's day by day.
And with the snowball, that would be very difficult, because then as public health monitors fulfillment of the quarantines, how many students can we get back at a time? And that's probably going to have a decision on when we actually bring enough of the class back to say, okay, we can teach some of you here and some of you at home. So yeah, that'll take, there's all sorts of those scenarios that are out there right now. All right, we'll get to some more YouTube questions. Okay. Tony, I don't know the first name, but she says, hi, I am a big fan all the way from Australia. So thank you, whoever you are. Roxanne Henge asks, if students wear masks on the bus, can there be more than 13 students that ride one bus? At this point, no, because that guidance has not changed. So the 13 students on the bus, we are sticking with that. At this point, we do not feel comfortable enough and do not have the guidance to increase that number to even the point where if they wore masks, it would be advisable to do that. So at this point, because those kids are going to be on the bus for up to an hour, and they're going to be inside of 6 feet of each other, particularly if family members are riding together, increasing that capacity already. We are not going to increase that limit at this time. Jessica Williams, can individual teachers require special PPE, and if so, when will we be notified if ours does? Jessica, at this point, no. Face coverings are recommended and not required. We are going to provide face shields for teachers and have face masks available in the nurses' offices for any students that would like to wear one and forgot one and need to get one, or just to provide more protection for our nurse and the secretaries as they deal with student health issues through the day. So at this point, no, we are not requiring any special face coverings of any students. Something that I should mention also is that because we're going to have the cleaning supplies in every classroom and you can't find them anyway, don't worry about buying Clorox wipes this year. You can save that. A possible clarification: what if can a teacher require that their students wear specific PPE in his or her classroom? And the answer is no at this point, because we are recommending not requiring, and that is a district expectation. I have a question from Lilo. Will students be allowed to go to the library and check out books? Yes, they will. And again, it will be, we'll try to stay as socially distanced as we can. I know we're going to continue to have, at the elementary level, we'll continue to have students going to different specials, music and art and guidance and library and all of the CTE exploratories at the middle school. So we're planning on all of those activities continuing. We'll just have to see what they can do. Roxanne Henge asks, will every class have a recorded lecture in Google Classroom or only if someone has chosen online learning? We'll only require teachers to do that if they have a student that's chosen to do online learning. All teachers will have to do it if we do have to send a building or the district home for online learning. We will require every teacher to do those online things, online meetings like we did, but now of course there'll be required activities. But there will not be a recorded lecture if there's no student in that classroom that has selected online learning. Okay.
So if a parent calls in and says that their kid came down with COVID, but it was over like a weekend or a short week, do they quarantine the class then because there was contact, or is it because over the weekend it doesn't count, or how does that work?
Well, there would be testing, and again, it would go back to the date that symptoms started. And so if the date that symptoms started was during the week, then that would count, correct? And we would have to go through the quarantine process. But again, they're going to have to call us. We're going to have I should say we have to have a doctor's note for all of this. And but yes, it's when the symptoms started, when they presented with symptoms, not when they got the test back from the doctor.
So it'd be like they were fine Friday, but woke up Saturday completely sick, then tested positive. That would be okay then.
Yes, theoretically, but when did when did they get tested on a Saturday, or did they get tested on a Monday? And again, it comes back to when the symptoms presented. If it was over the weekend, then theoretically we would be safe. So Wendy is reminding me to share with everyone that the 6 feet, under 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, if you don't meet that threshold, that's the question to ask. If it was under 15 minutes, over 6 feet away, you're fine. Which is actually why I'm not wearing my mask to come out and ask you questions, but I was wearing my mask when I was floating around beforehand tonight because I was around people for a longer period of time. Yeah.
Is it going to be the expectation, the district expectation that if a student has a symptom that they will go get tested? And the reason I ask that is I talked to a couple and they said, we can't quarantine, financially we can't quarantine for 14 days. So we would, if my kid gets really sick, then we'll haul him in. But does that make sense what I'm asking?
Right. So there are a laundry list of symptoms that would suggest that you might have COVID and that you might have something else. And so again, it's up to the parents as to when to go see the doctor. Just because your child has a fever, just because your child has a cough, just because your child has any of the different symptoms, it's still up to the parent to take them to the doctor and get tested.
Will they be having open house this year where the kids come in, meet their teachers, do all that like they normally have?
I'm going to send that down to, have we put that on the schedule yet? Open house. Okay, open house is not scheduled yet, but are we still planning on having it? Okay, that has not been discussed yet, so we will add it to the list of questions to solve. Very good.
Appreciate the communication that you've had with us either via email or tonight, and we know this is going to change between now and August 24th, and we know you're going to do your darndest to have have our kids get continuity in their education. So I appreciate all the stuff you've had to go through because you've been getting bombarded from all sorts of places. So I want you to know I appreciate the work you've done, and I appreciate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you. And I appreciate those comments, and Mr. Bohr was very gracious there, and I appreciate that. It will change a lot, and that's part of why this meeting was so important tonight, because we have to get those questions. We have to get the things on the list we haven't considered yet. And to be honest, this is the first one that I know about in our area, and so I did send it to the superintendents in case the other superintendents, hey, you want to laugh and throw tomatoes? Here you go. See what it's like. But there are other people that can watch this too, and questions and comments they haven't thought of yet as well. So it's for us, and it's out there on the internet for anybody else. Tony, are there any more YouTube questions? He says one. And for the rest of you in-house here, if you would be thinking about your questions, we're starting to slow down here, so if we're coming to the end, then that's okay. Shelley, S. Shelley R. Is there still going to be PE in high school, and if so, are showers going to be available? Yes and yes. And as a matter of fact, in the boys' locker room at the high school, they're replacing the shower columns this year to put in new ones that don't leak and run 24 hours a day. There's also going to be a new surface in the shower, a non-slip surface. So we're putting in some new things there and starting that project. We'll be going to all of the locker rooms over the next several years. But yes, there will be PE. Yes, showers will be available until we are told that's not a good option anymore. Okay. From the Beltman family, thank you for your leadership and guidance. General's pride, thank you, Beltmans. And yes. See if I can.
So if we have a child that a teacher feels that needs to go home, or the nurse feels they need to go home, will that individual, the kid, be like quarantined into a room before until parents can come pick them up?
Sure. So as with normal practice, when a student vomits or has a fever or whatever and they're going to go home, they will be they can stay in the nurse's station, or there are areas in the offices where they can be taken to be until someone can pick them up, and then that area can be sterilized. With COVID, again, we are not going to diagnose. We know that they have a symptom. We don't know that they have anything. So that's for the doctors to decide. But yes, there would be an area that they can go to, or just stay in the nurse's station, and then that area will be sanitized after the student is able to go home. Okay.
I just want to add, my responsibility at the hospital is not to do the investigations. That's up to public health. And I did have a question here, and they may go back 48 hours from the day of symptoms. I don't know that hard rule fast and now for you guys. So it's somewhere between the day symptoms started or 48 hours before the days of the time that the symptoms started. So that is something that will have to get clarified through public health. So I just don't want to lead you guys astray with that tonight.
And we've had other conversations relating to that, and I'm not going to try to muddy the waters and sound like an expert, but yeah, and it'll come down to what public health tells us is the date, and then that's the date we start doing the contact tracing from.
They'll ask what day the symptoms started, and again, I don't know that hard and fast rule, so I just want to make sure that that is something that is left up to them, and they will decide once they do the interviewing with the people that were involved. Okay?
All right, thank you, Wendy. Any other questions? If not, one group that I forgot to thank before we started tonight was our custodial staff. They came in and cleaned the auditorium up the last couple of days, made sure they sprayed all the seats so everything was sanitized and clean and ready for us tonight. So we appreciate their efforts. We thank you for coming tonight. Spread the word. The information is available. There's a link on the Facebook page. It was emailed out to district parents and students. Make sure you're continuing to contact the office and check the document, because it is a fluid situation and it will change daily, as we've said before. So again, thank you all for coming. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, and have a great evening. Thank you.